The phone rang just as the morning sun spilled through the cracked blinds, lighting up the dust in the air like tiny floating stars, and Arif Malik almost didn't answer it, because mornings were already heavy enough without surprises. He was standing barefoot in the kitchen of his small rented house, holding a chipped mug of tea, thinking about bills, school lunches, and how tired his bones felt at only 36. That single phone call from a stranger whose voice he didn't recognize would quietly begin to change everything he believed about loss, kindness, and the invisible threads that tie lives together. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen miracles that arrive when people are at their weakest, take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Touch. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Arif had not planned this life. 3 years earlier, he had been an ordinary man with ordinary dreams, working as an electrical technician, saving slowly and laughing easily. Then came the accident that stole his wife on a clear afternoon and left him standing on a hospital corridor floor with his 2-year-old daughter Zara asleep in his arms, unaware that her world had already cracked. Since that day, Arif's life had narrowed into a routine built on survival. Wake early, prepare Zara for school, work long hours, return home exhausted, repeat. The laughter faded, replaced by responsibility that felt like carrying a mountain on his shoulders alone. The neighborhood where Arif rented his house was quiet, modest, and predictable, but next door stood a mansion that felt like it belonged to a different universe. Tall iron gates, white stone walls, trimmed hedges, and wide windows that reflected the sky. For months, it had been empty, or at least that's what Arif assumed. No sounds, no lights at night, no movement except a gardener who came once a week. To Arif, it was just a reminder of how uneven life could be. Some people lived with space and silence, others learned to breathe between walls that were always closing in. That morning, the call came from an unknown number. The woman on the other end spoke calmly, politely, asking if he was Arif Malik, confirming his address, and then explaining that she had found his number through a community registry. She said she needed to speak with him about something important related to his house and asked if they could meet later that day. There was no threat in her tone, but something about the formality made his stomach tighten. Arif agreed, hung up, and stared at his phone for a long moment, wondering what kind of trouble might be knocking on his already fragile door. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Arif dropped Zara at school under the bright sun, watching her small backpack bounce as she walked through the gate, and whispered a silent promise that he would keep going no matter how tired he felt. At work, his mind drifted. He imagined complaints, legal notices, maybe even eviction. He couldn't afford surprises. Every rupee was counted twice before being spent once. By midday, the heat had settled over the neighborhood, and when Arif returned home during his lunch break, a black sedan was already parked near the mansion next door. The iron gates were open for the first time since he had moved in. A woman stood in the driveway, dressed simply, sunglasses resting on her head, her posture calm and self-assured. She noticed him immediately and offered a small, respectful smile as he walked past with uncertainty written all over his face. The woman introduced herself as Samira Hussain, explaining that she had recently returned to the city after years abroad. She spoke with clarity and purpose, her eyes observant but gentle. She said she was the owner of the mansion next door, and Arif felt something inside him pause. He had lived beside that house for over a year, and never once imagined its owner would one day stand in front of him, speaking his name. Samira explained that she had been reviewing neighborhood matters, checking property lines, utilities, and community records, when she noticed an issue involving shared electrical wiring between their properties. The call, she said, was simply to clarify and resolve it properly. Relief washed over Arif so strongly that he almost felt embarrassed by how tense he had been. Still, he apologized for any inconvenience, his voice careful, as if politeness could protect him from unseen consequences. As they spoke under the open sky, something unexpected happened. Samira noticed Zara's small shoes near the door and asked casually about them. Arif explained he was a single father, and without meaning to, a little of his story slipped out. He didn't speak dramatically or seek sympathy. He spoke the way tired people do, briefly and honestly, as if the facts alone were heavy enough. Samira listened quietly. There was no pity in her expression, only attention. She nodded, thanked him for his time, assured him the wiring issue would be handled by her team at no cost, and then surprised him by asking if Zara ever played outside. Arif admitted that the yard was small and uneven, and he rarely let her play unsupervised. Samira looked toward the open lawn of her mansion, sunlight stretching across the grass like an invitation, and said something that stayed with him long after she returned behind the gates. She mentioned that children needed space, and sometimes neighbors could share more than fences. Over the next few days, small changes began. An electrician arrived and fixed issues Arif didn't even realize were dangerous. The flickering light in his kitchen stopped. The old switch that sparked when touched was replaced. No bill followed. Then one afternoon, Samira sent a message through the gardener, offering permission for Zara to use the lawn next door during the daytime, as long as Arif was comfortable. At first Arif hesitated. Pride and caution wrestled inside him. But Zara's eyes lit up when she saw the wide green space, and Arif realized that accepting kindness was sometimes harder than surviving without it. Day by day, the mansion next door stopped feeling like a symbol of distance and started feeling like part of the neighborhood. Samira was not always present, but when she was, she greeted Arif with warmth that felt sincere. He learned that she had lost her parents young, built her life through relentless effort, and returned to the city not for wealth, but for closure. The mansion, once filled with silence, now echoed with daytime sounds of a child laughing as she chased butterflies across the lawn. Arif's life didn't magically transform overnight. He still worked long hours. He still felt the ache of loneliness late at night when Zara slept and the house grew quiet. But something inside him softened. The world no longer felt entirely hostile. He found himself standing a little straighter, smiling a little more, believing again in simple human decency. One afternoon, as the sun leaned westward and shadows stretched long across both houses, Samira invited Arif to sit outside for tea in the open air. They spoke about ordinary things. Work, weather, childhood memories. No grand promises were made, no dramatic confessions exchanged. But there was understanding, the kind that grows when two people recognize survival in each other. Weeks later, Arif received another call from Samira. This time, it was about an opportunity. She had learned of a technical position opening in a company she partnered with, one that offered stable hours and better pay. She said his skills were a strong match and encouraged him to apply. Arif almost declined, afraid of disappointment. But he applied anyway, and for the first time in years, hope didn't feel foolish. When Arif got the job, the news arrived on a bright morning filled with birdsong and warm light. He stood in his kitchen again, phone in hand, tea forgotten, and felt tears sting his eyes. It wasn't just about the job, it was about being seen, about someone believing he was worth the effort. As Zara grew more confident, laughing freely in the daytime sun, Arif realized that the stranger's call had never been about wiring or property lines. It had been about connection, about kindness, traveling quietly from one life to another, changing both in ways that couldn't be measured on paper. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still exists in unexpected places, please take a moment now to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who may be struggling silently, just like Arif once was. Before this story ends, we have one special request for you. Please comment below with the word hope if you believe a single act of kindness can change a life. On a peaceful daytime afternoon, Arif stood in his small yard, watching Zara wave at Samira across the shared fence.